My billionaire ex-husband hired my secret son as his assistant and had no idea he was his own flesh and blood. You have his eyes, you know. The casual observation from Ethan Blackwell's business partner froze Jack Turner in place. Coffee pot suspended mid-purr. I'm sorry. Jack managed, his heart suddenly pounding. Marcus Reynolds glanced between the young assistant and the CEO working across the room. You and Ethan, same eyes, same mannerisms. It's uncanny. Jack carefully set down the coffee pot, his mind racing. For 3 weeks he'd worked alongside the billionaire who had no idea he was his father. Every compliment on his business instincts, every shared laugh over identical preferences. Every moment of unexpected connection had been building to this inevitable recognition. Just a coincidence, Jack said with a forced smile. But the seed had been planted. That night he called his mother, laughing as he recounted the day's events. Mom, you won't believe what Mr. Reynolds said today. He thinks I look like Ethan Blackwell. Isn't that crazy? The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. When Rachel finally spoke, her voice trembled with barely concealed panic. Jack, we need to talk. Have you ever wondered what would happen if the secret you've kept for decades suddenly threatened to explode into the open? What if the very thing you've hidden your entire adult life was about to be revealed in the most public, most painful way possible? I'm Mr. Harrison, and today I'm sharing the extraordinary story of a woman who kept her son's true identity hidden from his billionaire father for over 20 years, only to watch in horror as fate brought them together in the most unexpected way. When her son was hired as his father's personal assistant, the countdown to discovery began, and nothing would ever be the same again. If you believe that some secrets are too big to stay buried forever, hit that like button right now and subscribe to Timeless Love Tales for more stories that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about family, love, and the choices that define our lives. Rachel Turner sat frozen at her kitchen table, staring at the email on her phone as if it were a ticking bomb. The morning light streamed through her apartment windows, casting long shadows across the room as her coffee grew cold beside her. Congratulations to Jackson Turner on his acceptance to the Blackwell Executive Training Program. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled through the details. After 4 years of watching her son work tirelessly through college, this should have been a moment of pure pride. Instead, a cold dread washed over her as she read the signature at the bottom. Ethan Blackwell, CEO, 23 years of careful distance of rebuilding her life piece by piece after walking away from a marriage that had slowly suffocated her spirit. And now this, her son, their son, was about to walk straight into the orbit of the man who never knew he existed. Mom, you okay? She looked up to see Jack standing in the doorway, his tall frame nearly filling the space. At 22, he was the spitting image of his father. The same intense blue eyes, the same determined set to his jaw. Even the same habit of running his hand through his dark hair when he was thinking deeply. I'm fine, she managed, forcing a smile, just processing your big news. The Blackwell program, that's incredible, Jack, I know, right? His face lit up with excitement. Only 6 applicants accepted nationwide. And get this, the first 3 months include direct mentorship with the CEO himself. Can you believe it? Ethan Blackwell, mom, the Ethan Blackwell. Rachel felt the room tilt slightly. Direct mentorship. Yeah. Apparently he personally selects the candidates and works with them before they branch into different divisions. Jack grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl, tossing it lightly. The acceptance email said I'd essentially be functioning as his assistant while learning the ropes. Talk about diving into the deep end. Rachel nodded mechanically, her mind racing through impossible scenarios. Should she tell Jack now? Should she contact Ethan? Or should she do what she'd done for over 2 decades? Protect her son from the complicated truth of his origins. Mom, seriously, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. In many ways, she had the ghost of a life abandoned, of choices made in both desperation and determination. Nothing's wrong, she said, standing up and embracing him tightly. I'm just so proud of you. This is a huge opportunity. Over his shoulder, Rachel caught sight of their reflection in the window. Mother and son, the family they'd always been, just the two of them against the world. But the world was about to get much more complicated. Have you ever built a life around protecting someone you love, only to watch it all unravel in an instant. If you've ever had to choose between a painful truth and a comfortable lie, you'll understand the impossible choice Rachel faced in that moment. To understand how Rachel found herself in this impossible situation, we need to go back to the beginning, to a time when she was young, ambitious, and hopelessly in love with a man whose vision would change the world, but whose success would ultimately tear them apart. Rachel had met Ethan Blackwell during her final year at business school, when he was already making waves as a brilliant young entrepreneur with his first successful startup. Their connection was immediate and electric. Two ambitious minds with complementary skills and shared dreams. You see things differently. Ethan had told her during those early days, his voice filled with genuine admiration. You find solutions where others see only problems. Their courtship had been a whirlwind, intense, passionate, and blinding in its perfection. Marriage followed quickly, and for the first 2 years Rachel had believed she was living a dream. She worked alongside Ethan as his company grew, her financial acumen complementing his visionary ideas. They were partners in every sense, or so she thought. But as Blackwell Industries expanded, so did the distance between them. Ethan's drive, once so attractive, became all-consuming. Board meetings that once included her strategic input gradually became closed-door sessions where her presence was no longer requested. Her role in the company she had helped build began to shrink, her voice increasingly silenced. The board feels more comfortable with Bradford handling the financial strategy, Ethan had explained after one particularly painful exclusion. It's nothing personal, just business. But it was personal. Every dismissal, every overlooked suggestion, every time he spoke over her in meetings, it all felt deeply, painfully personal. Their home life began to reflect these changes. Ethan expected Rachel to attend social functions as the perfect corporate wife, to entertain clients and partners, to represent the Blackwell brand with flawless precision. Her own ambitions, her own identity began to blur at the edges. "You don't need to worry about the business anymore," he told her one night after she'd questioned a risky acquisition. "Focus on building our home life. We'll start a family soon." It wasn't that she didn't want children. She did, but she wanted them as an addition to her identity, not a replacement for it. The more Ethan pushed her toward a role she hadn't chosen, the more she felt herself disappearing. The breaking point came during a charity gala celebrating Blackwell Industries' 5th anniversary. Rachel overheard Ethan responding to a question about her contribution to the company's success. "Rachel's greatest talent is supporting me behind the scenes," Heat said smoothly to the journalist. "She's found her true calling in managing our social obligations." That night, after returning to their penthouse, Rachel had confronted him. The argument that followed revealed the unbridgeable gap that had formed between them. "You used to value my mind, my ideas," she'd said, tears of frustration burning in her eyes. "Now all you seem to care about is how I look on your arm at events." "That's not fair," Ethan had countered, his expression genuinely confused. "I've given you everything. This home, financial security, a position of respect in society. What more could you possibly want? To be seen, Ethan. To be valued for who I am, not just what I represent for you." He'd looked at her as if she were speaking a language he couldn't understand. "This is who we are now, Rachel. This is the life we've built. Why can't you just be happy with it?" In that moment, Rachel realized that Ethan couldn't see what he was doing. How he was slowly erasing the woman he'd fallen in love with and replacing her with an accessory to his success. In his mind, he was offering her the perfect life. He couldn't see that it was perfect only by his definition, not hers. 2 weeks later, she discovered she was pregnant. By then, she had already decided to leave. The pregnancy only cemented her resolve. She would not raise a child in the shadow of Ethan's controlling influence, watching them slowly molded into whatever image he deemed appropriate. If you've ever had to make a choice between your own identity and someone else's vision for your life, hit that like button. And if you believe that sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that ultimately save us, share this video with someone who needs to hear that message today. Rachel left without telling Ethan about the baby, taking only what she had brought into the marriage and the settlement outlined in their prenuptial agreement. Modest by Blackwell standards, but enough to start over, she changed her last name back to Turner, moved across the country, and built a new life centered around the child growing inside her. When Jackson was born, Rachel made a promise to herself and to him. He would grow up knowing his own worth, free to become whoever he wanted to be. She would support his dreams rather than imposing her own, and she would protect him from the complicated truth until he was old enough to understand. The early years weren't easy. Rachel juggled part-time consulting work with caring for an infant, often working late into the night after Jack had fallen asleep. There were moments of doubt, of wondering whether she'd made the right choice. Especially on those nights when Jack would cry with fever and there was no one to share the worry, no one to take the next shift so she could sleep. But there were also moments of pure joy that validated her decision. Jack's first steps, his first words, the way his face lit up when he mastered a new skill. She watched him grow into a thoughtful, kind-hearted boy with his father's determination, but none of his ruthlessness. Over the years, Jack had asked about his father. Rachel had crafted a careful narrative, a brief marriage that ended amicably before either knew about the pregnancy, a clean break with no lingering connections. She told him his father had been a businessman who traveled constantly, making a relationship with a child impossible. It wasn't entirely untrue, just incomplete. "Did he ever want to meet me?" Jack had asked once around his 10th birthday. Rachel had chosen her words carefully. "Your father made choices about his life priorities before you were born. Those choices didn't include the kind of stability a child needs. It wasn't a lie exactly. Ethan had chosen his company, his vision, his definition of success over the partnership they'd once shared. Those choices had made it impossible for Rachel to imagine raising a child with him." As Jack grew, Rachel built a successful career as a financial consultant for small businesses, providing them with the expertise she had once offered Ethan. The irony wasn't lost on her that she had found professional fulfillment doing exactly what he had dismissed. Her clients valued her insight, her strategic thinking, her ability to see both the forest and the trees. She dated occasionally, but never remarried. Some of her friends, particularly Sophia Martinez, who had known her since college, urged her to get back out there more seriously. But Rachel found her fulfillment in her work and in raising Jack, who proved to be as brilliant and determined as his father, but with a compassion and emotional intelligence that was entirely his own. When Jack decided to study business and finance in college, Rachel had felt a mixture of pride and apprehension. She recognized Ethan's ambition in him, but hoped she had instilled enough of herself to balance it. Watching him excel, seeing how he lifted others up rather than using them as stepping stones, had reassured her. Until now, until this email that threatened to collapse the carefully constructed walls between past and present. 3 days before Jack was set to begin at Blackwell Industries, Rachel sat across from Sophia at their favorite cafe, turning her coffee cup in endless circles as she debated what to do. "You have to tell him Ratch," Sophia said firmly, "before he walks into that building, before he shakes Ethan's hand, not knowing he's meeting his father." "And say what exactly?" Rachel countered. "By the way, Jack, that CEO you're about to work for, he's actually your father who I've been hiding you from for your entire life. How do you think that's going to go over? Better than him figuring it out on his own, which he will. Have you looked at them side by side recently? The resemblance is uncanny." Rachel had spent hours the night before scrolling through recent photos of Ethan from business magazines and company profiles. The years had been kind to him. His dark hair now threaded with distinguished silver at the temples, lines of experience framing his eyes, but still unmistakably the man she had once loved, and unmistakably Jack's father. "Maybe no one will notice," Rachel said weakly. Sophia gave her a look that clearly communicated what she thought of that theory. "Okay, fine. People will notice, but maybe they'll just think it's coincidence, Rachel." Sophia reached across the table to steal her friend's nervous hands. "This isn't just about whether people notice. This is about Jack and what he deserves to know. And yes, it's about Ethan, too. Ethan gave up any right to know about Jack when he tried to turn me into someone I wasn't, Rachel said, an old anger flaring briefly. Did he, though? You never gave him the choice. The words hung between them, uncomfortable in their truth. Rachel had justified her decision 1,000 times over the years. She was protecting Jack, protecting herself, even protecting Ethan from obligations he hadn't signed up for. But beneath those justifications lay the harder truth. She had been hurt and afraid, and leaving completely had seemed like the only way to truly start over. I don't know what to do, soft, she admitted finally. If I tell Jack now right before he starts this incredible opportunity, I could ruin everything for him. If I tell Ethan first, I'm making decisions for Jack again, just like I've been doing his whole life. There's no perfect solution here, Sophia said gently, but doing nothing isn't an option anymore. The truth is going to come out one way or another. The only question is whether you want to control how that happens. Rachel nodded slowly, knowing her friend was right. The carefully constructed separation between her past and present was about to collapse, and all she could do now was try to manage the fallout. As she walked home from the cafe, Rachel made her decision. She would tell Jack tonight, give him the full story, and support whatever he chose to do with the information. It would be his choice whether to proceed with the position, knowing the truth, his choice whether to reveal himself to Ethan. But when she arrived home, Jack was buzzing with excitement, showing her the welcome package Blackwell Industries had sent, company merchandise, information about the training program, and a personal note from Ethan Blackwell himself expressing how much he looked forward to working with the next generation of visionary leaders. Seeing Jack's enthusiasm, his pride at being selected, Rachel couldn't bring herself to potentially taint this achievement with her revelation. Tomorrow, she told herself, I'll tell him tomorrow. But tomorrow came with Jack's early departure to shop for new suits appropriate for his position, and the day after brought last-minute preparations and an evening celebration dinner with his college friends. Before Rachel knew it, the morning of Jack's first day had arrived, and her window of opportunity had closed. The sleek glass tower of Blackwell Industries headquarters gleamed in the morning sunlight as Jack Turner stepped through the revolving doors, adjusting his new tie nervously. The lobby was a cathedral to modern success. Soaring ceilings, minimalist design, and the distinctive Blackwell logo emblazoned on the wall behind the reception desk. Jackson Turner, he told the receptionist, trying to project confidence. I'm starting the executive training program today. Of course, Mr. Turner. Miss Chun is expecting you. The receptionist made a quick call, and moments later, a poised young woman in an impeccable suit approached. Jack, welcome to Blackwell Industries. I'm Olivia Chun, HR Director and Coordinator for the Executive Training Program. She extended her hand with a warm smile. We're thrilled to have you join us. As they shook hands, Olivia tilted her head slightly, studying his face with a curious expression. Has anyone ever told you that you look familiar? Jack laughed nervously. I have one of those faces, I guess, perhaps. Olivia smiled professionally, but her eyes remained thoughtful. Let me show you to the orientation room. The other trainees are already here, and Mr. Blackwell will be joining us shortly to welcome everyone personally. Jack followed her through security checkpoints and up to the executive floor, his heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. He was about to meet Ethan Blackwell, the man whose business strategies he'd studied in college, whose success story had inspired his career path, and who, unknown to both of them, was his father. The orientation room was sleek and modern with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. 5 other young professionals sat around a conference table, all projecting the same nervous enthusiasm that Jack felt. Olivia introduced him to the group, then checked her watch. Mr. Blackwell should be here any moment. He never misses welcoming new trainees personally. As if on cue, the door opened and Ethan Blackwell strode in. At 53, he carried himself with the confident authority of a man who had built an empire from nothing. His dark hair was now threaded with silver, but his piercing blue eyes, the same eyes Jack saw in the mirror every morning, were as sharp and focused as ever. Welcome to Blackwell Industries, Ethan said, his voice resonant and commanding. You 6 represent the best and brightest of your generation, selected from thousands of applicants. Over the next year, you'll be immersed in every aspect of our operation, starting with 3 months of direct mentorship with me. His gaze moved around the table, making brief eye contact with each trainee. When he reached Jack, something flickered across his expression. A momentary pause, a slight narrowing of his eyes, gone so quickly that Jack wondered if he'd imagined it. "I look forward to working with each of you," Ethan continued smoothly. "Miss Chun will handle your orientation today. Tomorrow you'll begin shadowing me in rotation, starting with—" He glanced down at the tablet in his hand. "Jackson Turner." Jack's stomach dropped. He'd expected to be part of the rotation, but not to be first in line. Not to be thrown into direct one-on-one interaction with Ethan Blackwell on his second day. "Thank you, sir," he managed to say, his voice steadier than he felt. "I'm looking forward to it." Ethan nodded, his expression unreadable. "My office 7 a.m. sharp. I start early." With that, he excused himself, leaving Olivia to continue the orientation. As the day progressed through security protocols, company policies, and tour of the facility, Jack found himself increasingly distracted by the looming reality of tomorrow's mentorship session. By the time he returned to his apartment that evening, his mind was racing with scenarios of what might happen when he spent hours alone with the father who didn't know he existed. He called his mother that night, needing to hear her voice to ground himself in the familiar before stepping further into this surreal situation. "How was your first day?" Rachel asked, her voice carefully controlled, betraying none of the anxiety Jack knew she must be feeling. "Good. Overwhelming but good." Jack hesitated, then added, "I met him, Mom." Ethan Blackwell, a beat of silence, and in nothing. "He welcomed all the trainees, assigned our rotation schedule. I'm shadowing him tomorrow." Another pause already. I thought there would be more general orientation first. That was today. Tomorrow I start actual work with him." Jack ran a hand through his hair, a gesture unconsciously mirroring his father's habit. "Mom, should I be worried about something? You've been acting strange ever since I got this position." "No, of course not," Rachel said quickly. It's a big opportunity. I want everything to go perfectly for you." Jack knew his mother well enough to sense there was more she wasn't saying, but he was too preoccupied with his own anxieties to press further. "I should get some sleep. Early start tomorrow." "Jack," Rachel said suddenly, her voice urgent, "just be yourself, okay? Don't try to be what you think he wants. Promise me that." The intensity in her tone surprised him. "I promise, Mom. Good night." As he hung up, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that there was something his mother wasn't telling him. Something important about Ethan Blackwell and this position he'd worked so hard to secure. The next morning, Jack arrived at Blackwell Industries at 6:45 a.m. determined to make a good impression by being early. To his surprise, Ethan was already in his office, reviewing documents with intense concentration. "Mr. Turner," Ethan acknowledged without looking up. "Coffee's on the credenza. Pour yourself a cup if you want one. Black for me." Jack did as instructed, nodding with a strange jolt that they both took their coffee the same way. Black, no sugar. A coincidence, surely, but one of many small similarities he would discover in the days to come. "Sir, down," Ethan said, finally looking up from his work. "Today, you'll observe my morning meetings, take notes on our quarterly strategy review, and assist with preparation for tomorrow's board presentation. I expect you to absorb everything, ask intelligent questions when appropriate, and stay out of the way when necessary." "Clear, crystal clear, sir." Ethan studied him for a moment, that same flicker of something, curiosity, recognition crossing his face. "Your resume is impressive. Double major in business and computer science. Graduated summa cum laude. Innovative thesis on predictive analytics in market strategy. You could have gone anywhere. Why Blackwell Industries?" The question caught Jack off guard. He prepared a polished answer about Blackwell's innovation and market position, but something in Ethan's direct gaze made him opt for honesty instead. "Your company built itself on the principle that technology should serve humanity, not the other way around." That resonated with me. "I want to be part of something that creates value beyond just profit." A ghost of a smile touched Ethan's lips. "That's not the answer most applicants give. They usually talk about our stock performance or market dominance." "Those are results, not purposes," Jack replied. "I'm more interested in the why than the what." Ethan's eyebrows rose slightly. Interesting perspective. Let's see if you maintain it. After a day of quarterly reports and shareholder demands, the day unfolded in a whirlwind of meetings, strategy sessions, and rapid-fire decisions that gave Jack a glimpse into the relentless pace of executive leadership. Throughout it all, he observed Ethan closely. His decision-making process, his interaction style, the way he commanded respect without demanding it. What struck Jack most was how familiar some of Ethan's mannerisms felt. The way he tapped his fingers when thinking deeply, how he tilted his head slightly when skeptical of an idea, even the specific phrasing he used when challenging assumptions. Jack had caught himself using those exact same expressions and gestures throughout college, earning comments from friends about his CEO mode. By late afternoon, they were reviewing the board presentation together, Ethan making rapid-fire changes while Jack updated the slides in real time. "No, that projection is too conservative," Ethan said, pointing to a growth chart. "The Asian market expansion will accelerate faster once we clear regulatory hurdles in Singapore. What if we show both scenarios?" Jack suggested the conservative projection and an optimistic one with clear triggers for which path we expect to follow. Ethan paused, considering that's actually a good approach. It addresses Westfield's concerns while still communicating our confidence. He gave Jack an appraising look. "Where did you learn to think like that?" Jack shrugged. "My mother. She's a financial consultant for small businesses. She always says that numbers tell a story, but smart people prepare for multiple endings." Something shifted in Ethan's expression. A subtle change Jack couldn't quite interpret. "Your mother sounds like a wise woman." "She is," Jack agreed, feeling a sudden pang of guilt for the secrets that lay between them. "She raised me on her own, taught me everything I know about business ethics and strategic thinking." "And your father?" The question seemed casual, but Ethan's eyes were watchful. "Not in the picture," Jack said, the practiced response coming automatically. "Left before I was born." Ethan nodded slowly. His loss clearly. The moment hung between them, charged with an undercurrent neither man could identify. Then Ethan glanced at his watch and the spell broke. "It's nearly 7. We've accomplished enough for today. Be here at the same time tomorrow. We'll finalize the presentation before the board meeting." As Jack gathered his things to leave, Ethan added almost as an afterthought, "You did well today, Turner. Better than expected." Coming from Ethan Blackwell, known for his exacting standards, it was high praise indeed. Jack felt a surge of pride, followed immediately by a complicated tangle of emotions he couldn't quite unravel. He was earning the respect of his father without either of them knowing the truth of their connection. The pattern continued over the next 3 weeks. Jack arrived early each morning to find Ethan already working, spent intense days learning the intricacies of the business, and gradually earned more responsibility. As Ethan came to trust his judgment, they developed an easy working rhythm, their similar thinking styles allowing them to anticipate each other's approaches to problems. Others began to notice. Olivia Chun commented on how quickly Jack had adapted to Ethan's demanding pace. "It usually takes trainee months to get in sync with him, but you two work like you've known each other for years." Jack had laughed it off, attributing it to good preparation and compatible work styles. But privately, he couldn't ignore the growing list of similarities between himself and Ethan Blackwell. From their analytical approach to problems to their preference for the same obscure jazz musicians to the way they both unconsciously straightened items on a table to precise right angles. Then came the day in the executive dining room when Marcus Reynolds, Ethan's longtime business partner and closest friend, made the observation that would change everything. "You have his eyes, you know." The casual comment froze Jack in place. Coffee pot suspended mid-purr. "I'm sorry," Jack managed, his heart suddenly pounding. Marcus glanced between the young assistant and the CEO working across the room. "You and Ethan, same eyes, same mannerisms. It's uncanny." Jack carefully set down the coffee pot, his mind racing. For 3 weeks, he'd worked alongside the billionaire who had no idea he was his father. Every compliment on his business instincts, every shared laugh over identical preferences, every moment of unexpected connection had been building to this inevitable recognition. Just a coincidence, Jack said with a forced smile. But the seed had been planted that night, he called his mother, laughing as he recounted the day's events. Mom, you won't believe what Mr. Reynolds said today. He thinks I look like Ethan Blackwell. Isn't that crazy? The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. When Rachel finally spoke, her voice trembled with barely concealed panic. Jack, we need to talk. If you've ever had a moment when your entire understanding of your life suddenly shifted, hit that like button. And if you believe that the truth, no matter how painful, is always better than living with lies, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales for stories that explore the complicated reality of family secrets and unexpected revelations. Mom Jack's voice sharpened with concern. What's going on? Rachel took a deep breath, knowing the moment she had both dreaded and anticipated for 23 years had finally arrived. Not over the phone. Can you come over now? An hour later, Jack sat across from his mother at her kitchen table, the same table where he'd grown up doing homework, celebrating birthdays, sharing the triumphs and disappointments of his life with the one person who had always been his constant. You're scaring me, he said, studying her pale face and trembling hands. Whatever it is, just tell me. Rachel nodded, gathering her courage. It's about your father, about Ethan Blackwell. Jack's expression shifted from concern to confusion. What about him? Did you know him somehow, work for him in the past? I didn't work for him, Jack. Rachel's voice was barely above a whisper. I was married to him. The words hung in the air between them, impossible and yet undeniable. Jack stared at his mother, waiting for the punchline, the explanation that would make sense of this statement. When none came, he leaned back in his chair, the blood draining from his face. Ethan Blackwell is my father. The question came out flat, disbelieving. Rachel nodded, tears filling her eyes. Yes. And he doesn't know about me. No, I left before I knew I was pregnant. By the time I found out, I had already decided our marriage was over. Jack stood abruptly, packing the small kitchen as he tried to process this revelation. 3 weeks, Mom. I've been working with him for 3 weeks, sitting in his office, attending meetings with him, learning from him. And you didn't think this was something I should know. I was going to tell you, Rachel said desperately before you started. But you were so excited, so proud of earning the position on your own merit. I couldn't bear to complicate that for you. Complicate? Jack laughed, a harsh sound without humor. That's what you call finding out the man I've been trying to impress is actually my father. The father I've asked about my entire life. I'm sorry, Rachel whispered. I know I should have told you years ago. I wanted to protect you from what? From knowing who I really am. From having a relationship with my father. From being shaped into someone else's image of perfection. Rachel's voice rose with sudden intensity. You don't understand what it was like, Jack. Ethan and I started as equals, partners in everything. But as his success grew, he changed. Or maybe he just revealed who he truly was. He didn't want a partner anymore. He wanted an accessory, someone to play the perfect corporate wife. While he made all the decisions, Jack stopped packing, struck by the pain in his mother's voice. What happened really happened. Not the sanitized version you've been telling me all these years. Rachel sighed, gesturing for him to sit back down. When he did, she began the full story. How she and Ethan had met, their whirlwind romance and early partnership, the gradual erosion of her role and identity as Blackwell Industries grew, and finally the breaking point at the charity gala. When I discovered I was pregnant, I had already decided to leave, she concluded. I couldn't raise a child in that environment, watching you be molded into whatever Ethan decided you should be, with no room for your own dreams or identity. Jack was quiet for a long moment, absorbing everything. So you made the decision for both of us. You decided he wouldn't be part of my life and I wouldn't be part of his. Yes, Rachel admitted. At the time, it seemed like the only way to give you freedom to become your own person. And did you ever consider that maybe he changed? That maybe fatherhood would have changed him? I couldn't take that risk with your life, Jack. Not when I'd seen firsthand how Ethan's need for control consumed everything around him. Jack stood again, this time more slowly. I need some time to process this, to figure out what to do. What to do? Rachel's voice sharpened with alarm. Jack, you can't tell him, not like this. Not in the middle of your training program. The professional complications alone. Professional complications. Jack interrupted incredulously. "Mom, this isn't about my career. This is about my identity, my history, my father who doesn't know I exist. Please." Rachel stood too, reaching for his hand. "Just promise me you won't do anything impulsive. Think about what this would mean for all of us." Jack pulled his hand away gently. "I can't promise that. I need to figure this out on my own." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Did you ever love him? Really love him?" Rachel's eyes filled with tears again. "With all my heart. That's what made it so painful when things changed. The man I fell in love with was brilliant, visionary, and valued me as an equal. That's the part of him I see in you, the best parts, without the ruthless ambition that eventually consumed him." Jack nodded once, absorbing this final piece of information before leaving without another word. The drive back to his apartment passed in a blur, his mind replaying every interaction with Ethan Blackwell through this new impossible lens. The casual comments about similar thinking styles, the ease with which they anticipated each other's approaches to problems, Marcus Reynolds' observation about their identical eyes, it all made a terrible perfect sense. Now he was Ethan Blackwell's son. He had his father's eyes, his mannerisms, his analytical mind. And tomorrow he would walk into that office and face him carrying a truth that could shatter both their worlds. What would he do? Tell Ethan everything? Pretend nothing had changed? Quit the program and run away from the whole situation? By morning, Jack had made his decision. He would continue the program, continue working closely with Ethan, but watch and learn, not just about business strategy now, but about the man himself. Was Ethan still the controlling, identity-erasing person his mother had described? Or had 23 years changed him, softened his edges, taught him different values? Jack needed to know who his father truly was before deciding whether to reveal their connection. The next few days were a strange dance of discovery. Jack observed Ethan with new eyes, noting not just his business acumen, but his interactions with others. How he treated the cleaning staff with the same respect as board members. How he listened intently when junior employees spoke in meetings. How he mentored the other trainees with genuine interest in their development. This didn't seem like a man who would erase someone's identity for his own convenience. But people could present different faces in different contexts, Jack reminded himself. His mother had experienced a side of Ethan that employees and colleagues might never see. A week after Rachel's revelation, Jack found himself working late with Ethan, preparing for an international expansion announcement. They'd been reviewing documents for hours, and the conversation had gradually shifted from strictly business to more personal topics. "Your approach to the European market analysis was impressive," Ethan commented, leaning back in his chair. "You have natural instincts for this work." "Thank you, sir." "Ethan, please. After hours, we can drop the formalities." Studied Jack thoughtfully. "You mentioned your mother taught you about business. What does she do now?" Jack hesitated, then decided a version of the truth was safe enough. "She's a financial consultant for small businesses. Helps them develop sustainable growth strategies, manage cash flow, that sort of thing. Sounds like she could have been a valuable asset to a larger corporation." "She was once," Jack said carefully, "but she prefers the independence of consulting, being her own boss, setting her own priorities." Ethan nodded slowly. "I can respect that not everyone thrives in corporate structures." He paused, then added, "I was married once, early in my career." Jack's heart skipped a beat. "I didn't know that. It's not something I discuss often." It ended poorly. A shadow crossed Ethan's face. "She left without warning. One day she was there, the next she was gone. No explanation, no contact information. Nothing." "That must have been difficult," Jack managed, his throat suddenly dry. "It was a wake-up call," Ethan admitted. "Made me realize I'd been so focused on building the company that I'd neglected what was truly important." He shook his head slightly. "Sorry, not sure why I'm telling you this. Something about you makes it easy to talk." Jack swallowed hard. "What was she like? Your wife?" A small, sad smile touched Ethan's lips. "Brilliant. Determined. She could see solutions where everyone else saw only problems. We built the early foundation of Blackwell Industries together, though few people remember that now." The description matched exactly what his mother had said about their early partnership. Jack felt a strange doubling of perspective, seeing both sides of the same story for the first time. "What happened?" he asked, knowing he was pushing boundaries but unable to stop himself. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. I suppose. Success changed me, made me believe my vision was the only one that mattered. By the time I realized what I was losing, she was already gone. He straightened suddenly, as if remembering himself. Enough ancient history. Let's finish this presentation. The abrupt shift back to business was jarring, but Jack had seen something revealing in that brief, unguarded moment. Regret. Genuine regret for what had been lost. That night, he called his mother again. "Did Ethan try to find you after you left?" Rachel sighed heavily. "Yes, for almost a year I changed my number, moved across the country, used my maiden name. I was determined to make a clean break. Why? Even if you didn't want to be married anymore, why make it impossible for him to find you? Because I knew myself, Jack. I knew if he found me, if he apologized and promised to change, I might have been weak enough to believe him. And then the cycle would start again." She paused. "Why are you asking this now? Has something happened? He told me about you today." "Not specifically, he doesn't know who I am, but he talked about his ex-wife. About how she left without warning. Jack." Rachel's voice sharpened with concern. "You're getting too close to this. Maybe you should request a transfer to another mentor." "I can't do that, not now." Jack ran a hand through his hair. "Mom, he regrets what happened between you. He admitted that he was the problem, that success changed him. People often regret what they've lost without actually changing the behavior that caused the loss." Rachel said quietly, "Be careful, Jack. Don't romanticize him based on a few vulnerable moments." But it wasn't just moments. As the days passed, Jack saw consistent evidence that Ethan Blackwell had indeed changed from the man his mother described. He valued diverse perspectives in meetings, credited team members publicly for their contributions, and maintained a corporate culture that emphasized work-life balance. All stark contrasts to the controlling, credit-taking behavior Rachel had experienced. 2 weeks after learning the truth, Jack was no closer to deciding whether to reveal his identity to Ethan. The opportunity to know his father, to build a relationship with him, was tantalizing. But the potential fallout for his career, for his mother, for the careful life they had built was equally daunting. The decision was taken out of his hands on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Marcus Reynolds knocked on Ethan's office door, his expression unusually serious. "Got a minute? There's something we need to discuss privately." Ethan glanced at Jack, who was organizing notes from their morning meetings. "Turner, why don't you take an early lunch? We'll reconvene at 1. Once Jack had left, Marcus closed the door and sat across from his oldest friend. "Have you looked at that kid? Really looked at him?" "Jack, what about him?" "Ethan, he's the spitting image of you at that age. Same eyes, same mannerisms, same analytical approach. And he's what, 22, 23? Ethan frowned. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting you do the math. Rachel left 23 years ago. This kid shows up with your eyes, your brain, and a mother who's a financial consultant who taught him everything he knows about business." Marcus leaned forward. "He's your son, Ethan. I'd bet my stake in this company on it." The color drained from Ethan's face. That's impossible." "Rachel would have told me if she was pregnant, would she?" "After how things ended between you," Ethan sat back, his mind racing through every interaction with Jack Turner over the past month. The inexplicable sense of familiarity, the natural rapport, the shared thinking patterns that had made working together so effortless. Could it really be true? "I need to know for certain," he said finally. "How you can't exactly demand a DNA test from your trainee without explanation." Ethan was already pulling up the company database on his computer, his application file. "There will be a background check, personal details." He scanned through the documents quickly, stopping at Jack's birth certificate. Father's name not listed. Date of birth exactly 8 months after Rachel had left. "My God," Ethan whispered, "it's possible, it's actually possible." Marcus watched his friend carefully. "What are you going to do?" "I need to talk to Rachel." Ethan's voice was hollow with shock. "After all these years, I need to hear the truth from her." That evening, Rachel opened her door to find Ethan Blackwell standing on her threshold, looking exactly as she'd feared he would, devastated, angry, and unmistakably certain of what he had discovered. "Were you ever going to tell me?" he asked without preamble. "Or was I never supposed to know I had a son?" Rachel stepped back, allowing him to enter. "How did you find out?" Marcus recognized the resemblance. "Then I looked at Jack's birth certificate. Ethan moved into her living room, taking in the photographs on the walls. Jack's entire life documented in images he had never been part of. 23 years, Rachel. You kept my son from me for 23 years. I did what I thought was right, Rachel said quietly. For Jack. And yes, for myself, too. What could possibly justify? You were erasing me, Ethan. The words burst from her with the force of decades of suppressed emotion. Day by day, decision by decision, you were turning me from a partner into a possession. I couldn't bear to watch you do the same thing to our child. Ethan flinched as if she'd struck him. You never meant to, I know that, but it was happening all the same. Rachel sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. When I found out I was pregnant, I had already decided to leave. The baby just made it more urgent, more necessary to make a clean break. You had no right to make that decision alone, Ethan said, his voice low and controlled. He was my son, too. And what would you have done if you'd known? Fought me for custody, used your money and influence to control how he was raised, molded him into your perfect corporate heir. The accusation hung between them, sharp and painful. Ethan moved to the window, staring out at the city lights as he struggled to contain his emotions. I've imagined this conversation 1,000 times. He said, finally finding you demanding answers about why you left, but I never imagined this. Discovering I have a son who's been working alongside me, who I've been mentoring without knowing who he really is. He turned back to face her. Does he know about me? Rachel nodded. He found out 2 weeks ago. Marcus made a comment about the resemblance and Jack called me laughing about it. I couldn't lie anymore. 2 weeks. Ethan repeated incredulously. He's known for 2 weeks and said nothing. He wanted to understand who you are now before deciding whether to tell you whether you deserve to know him. The statement hit Ethan like a physical blow. Whether I deserved, he shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping him. I suppose that's fair. I've had to earn my own son's approval before being granted the privilege of knowing he exists before Rachel could respond. The front door opened, and Jack stepped in freezing when he saw Ethan standing in his mother's living room. I guess we're doing this now, he said quietly, closing the door behind him. The three of them stood in a triangle of tension, decades of secrets and unspoken truths filling the space between them. Jack looked from his mother to Ethan, seeing the raw emotion on both their faces. How did you find out? He asked Ethan. Marcus, then your birth certificate. Ethan studied his son's face with new awareness, seeing now what should have been obvious from the beginning. Why didn't you tell me when you found out? Jack moved further into the room, setting down his bag. I needed to know who you really are first. Mom told me why she left what you were like back then. I needed to see for myself whether you changed. And what did you conclude? Ethan's voice was carefully neutral, but his eyes betrayed his vulnerability. I think you have changed, Jack said slowly. The man I've been working with values other perspectives, gives credit where it's due, treats people with respect regardless of their position. That's not the man Mom described from 23 years ago. Rachel watched this exchange with a mixture of apprehension and wonder. Seeing them together, the resemblance was undeniable. Not just physical traits, but the way they held themselves, the careful precision of their speech when navigating emotional territory. I have changed, Ethan said quietly. Losing your mother forced me to confront parts of myself I hadn't wanted to see. It was the hardest lesson of my life, but a necessary one. He looked at Rachel. I'm sorry for what I did to us, for how I made you feel invisible in your own life. You deserved better. The simple apology delivered without excuses or qualifications brought unexpected tears to Rachel's eyes. This was what she had needed to hear 23 years ago. Acknowledgement of what had gone wrong, not just confusion about why she couldn't be happy with the life he designed. Where do we go from here? Jack asked the practical question, cutting through the emotional tension. Ethan turned to his son. That depends on what you want, Jack. I've missed 23 years of your life. I'd like the chance to know you not as a trainee but as my son, but I understand if that's not what you want. Jack considered this, the weight of the decision evident in his expression. I think I'd like that too, but there are complications. My position at Blackwell. For one, we can figure that out, Ethan assured him. If you want to continue the program, we'll establish proper mentorship with someone else. If you prefer to work elsewhere, I'll support that too. This isn't about Blackwell Industries. It's about us. Rachel watched this exchange with a growing realization. The man standing in her living room was not the same Ethan Blackwell she had left all those years ago. That Ethan would have immediately tried to take control to dictate the terms of their new reality. This Ethan was offering choices, respecting boundaries, acknowledging Jack's agency in the situation. "I think we all need time," she said finally. "This is a lot to process for everyone." Ethan nodded, then turned to Jack. "Take tomorrow off. We all need space to think." He moved toward the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, these past weeks working with you have been some of the most rewarding of my career. Not because you're my son. I didn't know that, but because of who you are, the man you've become." His gaze shifted to Rachel. "You did an incredible job raising him." After Ethan left, Jack and Rachel sat together in silence for several minutes, the magnitude of what had just happened settling around them. "Are you okay?" Rachel finally asked. Jack considered the question carefully. "I don't know yet. There's a lot to process, but I think eventually I will be." He looked at his mother. "What about you?" "Seeing him again after all this time harder than I expected," Rachel admitted. "And also healing in a way I didn't anticipate. Hearing him acknowledge what went wrong. Seeing that he's genuinely changed," she shook her head slightly. "I carried the weight of that decision keeping you from him for so long. Part of me always wondered if I'd done the right thing." "Did you do the right thing?" Rachel truly considered it for perhaps the first time. "I think I did the right thing then based on who he was and who I was at that time. But people change." I never accounted for that possibility. In the weeks that followed, they began the delicate process of redefining their relationships. Jack transferred to a different mentor in the program, but continued to meet with Ethan regularly outside of work. Dinners where they discovered shared interests beyond business. Weekend hikes where they talked about everything from philosophy to technology trends. Gradual steps toward building the father-son relationship they had both been denied. Rachel kept her distance initially, not wanting to complicate Jack's developing relationship with his father, but eventually Ethan reached out to her directly. "I'd like to talk," he said simply, "about the past, about Jack, about where we go from here as co-parents, even if it's 23 years later than it should have been." Their first conversation was awkward, painful at times, but also cathartic. Ethan spoke candidly about how losing her had forced him to confront his worst tendencies, how he'd worked to become a different kind of leader and person. Rachel shared the challenges and joys of raising Jack alone, the moments Ethan had missed, the person their son had become. 6 months after the truth had exploded into the open, the three of them sat together at Rachel's kitchen table, sharing a meal that would have seemed impossible half a year earlier. "I have something to tell you both," Jack announced. "I've been offered a position heading up the new social impact division at Blackwell. It would mean developing technologies specifically designed to address global challenges. Climate change, healthcare access, educational inequality." "That's incredible," Rachel said warmly. "It sounds perfect for you." Ethan nodded in agreement. "The board approved it unanimously. Your proposal was brilliant, innovative but practical, visionary but grounded in reality." Pride shone in his eyes, though I recused myself from the vote. For obvious reasons. Jack smiled, looking between the two people who had shaped him in such different ways. His mother's compassion and resilience, his father's vision and determination. The road ahead wouldn't be simple. There were still moments of tension, old wounds that hadn't fully healed. But there was also something new growing from the ruins of the past. Understanding, forgiveness, and the possibility of a different kind of family than any of them had imagined. "I've been thinking about something Mom told me years ago. Jack said that the hardest choices are often the ones that ultimately save us. I think that's true, but I also think sometimes we get second chances to make different choices to build something new from what was broken." Rachel reached out, taking Ethan's hand in one of hers and Jack's in the other. After a moment's hesitation, Ethan extended his free hand to Jack, completing the circle. Three people connected by blood, by choices both right and wrong, by secrets revealed and truths finally spoken. Not a conventional family, but a real one, complicated, imperfect, and finally honestly their own. If the story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison. Remember that sometimes the most painful truths can lead to the most beautiful beginnings, and it's never too late to heal what's been broken. Until next time, I'm Mr. Harrison reminding you that every family has its secrets, but love, honesty, and forgiveness can transform even the most difficult revelations into opportunities for growth and connection.